at this point, I was considering not watching Dynamite anymore. It was literally that bad. So we're going to hit only the high points here. We're not going to talk about the entire show. There's no point to it. In fact, I'm just going to say what happened and then give you a review of how we got there. So MJF is going to be challenging Hangman Paige for the world title at Forbidden Door. How did we get there? Well, they had a face-to-face between the two of them in which Hangman repeated that MJF is not going to get a championship match unless he uses his contract or he earns it. MJF then tried to goad Hangman, but it didn't work. He went with calling Hangman a fraud, a weak-minded, alcoholic, depressed little boy, while Hangman referred to MJF as a B-movie villain, an incel, and try-hard edgelord. Ultimately, after being called a coward and the fans chanting coward, MJF caved and decided to use his contract at the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. Then he assaulted Hangman Page at the end of the show, saying that he's going to take him apart. He also said that Hangman is vulnerable when he's weak. And, well, he's weak. He's vulnerable when he's weak. He's vulnerable when he's mad. He's going to make him mad. So, this obviously is a last-ditch effort to make the Forbidden Door a decent show. I think it's a waste of MJF's contract, and it kind of kills the drama to just do a straight-up match. But at the same time, do you really want to turn it into the Money in the Bank idea? Not really, right? So there. I think MJF definitely needs to change up his shtick. And there was no mention at all of the Hurt Business this week. So I guess he is really out, because those guys didn't even show up. But then MJF put on his Hurt gloves and went out there and beat up Hangman. So he really did go out and hurt people. But it's too late. Much too late. Jon Moxley defeated Kevin Knight. Of course he did. He also denied Darby Allin a match at Forbidden Door. After the Death Riders jumped Kevin Knight and speedball Mike Bailey, Darby Allin came out there to help. Then Claudio jumped in, beat him up. And then there was another run-in from Will Osprey, believe it or not. Will Osprey helps chase off the Death Riders. Then he makes the challenge of a 10-man lights-out steel cage match for Forbidden Door. So Will Osprey, who said he had a herniated disc, 2 herniated discs in his neck, is going to wrestle in a lights-out steel cage match. But he's not the only crippled man in the match, because Hiroshi Tanahashi is going to be one of his partners. The other 2 partners are going to be Kota Ibushi and Kenny Omega. So it's going to be Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, Darby Allin, Will Ospreay, and Hiroshi Tanahashi versus the Young Bucks, Jon Moxley, Claudio, Gabe Kidd. Yes, 5-on-5, okay? I like the idea of the match, essentially a War Games match. They're not calling it a Blood and Guts match. They are referring to it as a lights out steel cage match. So I'm guessing everybody's going to be in the match at one time. So, and they wanted to make it Forbidden Door-y, so they put Tanahashi in this match. Tanahashi looks worse every time I see him. He's basically Cotton Hill in Japanese form. He basically waddles to and fro. Like, I don't think his knees actually bend anymore. He really moves around like he's on stilts. At some point, you have to look at the state of New Japan and say that AEW did a terrible job of keeping this partnership steady or balanced. They basically just raped New Japan for all of their talent. So now most of the guys who were in New Japan, like Kevin Knight, are just kind of scrubbing the floors in AEW, and all they got left in New Japan are scrubs. And so they can't draw shit. There's a G1 going on right now, and nobody outside of the hardest of the hardcore New Japan fans give a shit. And this Forbidden Door is going to be mostly AEW guys wrestling other AEW guys, with the exception of maybe one or two big matches at the top of the card. Either way, this match is intriguing, except for the fact that they keep doing these 8-man trios. This show was full of that. Trios matches, 8-man tags. It's ridiculous. It's really absurd, you know. And these things are incredibly boring because we're seeing the same thing over and over again. But this is going to be different. Obviously, there's going to be blood. There's going to be people jumping off stuff. It's right up the alley of the new Minnesota Vikings cheerleaders. For them to be put in this match is going to be right up their alley. I do question Will Osprey even wrestling at Forbidden Door. If this injury is legit, I question him even wrestling, let alone wrestling in this match, in this kind of match, knowing that there's going to be weapons, knowing that there's going to be people jumping off the cage, and you never know what can happen when somebody leaps off the cage. That's AEW for you. Tony Khan recently came out and said Jay White is going to be down for a really, really, really long time. I mean, Adam Cole is pretty much done for. I mean, AEW is doing really, like, people are talking about how bad the PC is because, you know, some people tear their ACLs, but look at what's happening in AEW. Like, Kenny Omega's out for months and months. Eddie Kingston, Fat Eddie, he's out for months. He's out for over a year. You know, Kota Ibushi out for over a year. Will Osprey, he should be out for the rest of the year, but he's going to wrestle with, I guess, 2 herniated discs in his neck. These guys are basically androids running around AEW. You know, they're basically Frankenstein, where they're walking around with dead people's bones in their bodies and the rest of this stuff. What the hell is going on? They need to chill out. They need to chill. But I'm guessing they feel like they need Will Osprey here. That's why they're going to run the risk. And I'm sure Osprey's making enough money to take the risk. But for all the people who are fake upset about Seth Rollins' knee injury, I mean, a wrestler lied about being injured. Oh my God. Can you imagine a wrestler lying about being injured in this business? Now all of a sudden they're like, maybe Will Osprey was lying. They're like, no, his injury is for real. Well, then the person who is running your show is an idiot if they're going to let one of their highest paid, most valuable talents wrestle with 2 herniated discs in his neck in a cage match with a bunch of other people, and he can't control all the little quantities that could happen in the match. It's absolutely foolish. It's one show. It's not that important. Sit him home for the rest of the year. But you have to pretend that you care about talents at that point, which we know the AEW fans don't. Edge and Christian reunited. It did not get the reaction that one would have expected it would have got. It was actually kind of mild. This was not very well done. Obviously, Edge had to wrestle Stokely, and it was basically a joke match. For the setup, FTR has a restraining order on Edge, but the restraining order does not include Stokely. Why they didn't just go and get a restraining order specifically for Stokely, we don't know. But they didn't do that. So now Stokely is in a match with Edge. Edge is walking around. He's asking people with Ohio genetics, a female in the crowd with absolutely Midwest genetics, does Stokely have a chance with you? And she was like, absolutely not. I'm like, lady, you'd be lucky if he spit in your general direction. This woman was a hard 4. Okay? Hard 4. And she's probably an Ohio 6. But she's a hard 4 for anybody with some taste. Anyway, the crowd is chanting how Stoke don't got no hose. He's short, bald, and all this sort of stuff. And Edge just kicking his ass. He speared him once. FTR came out on the ring apron. He speared him again. Then the FTR jumped in the ring. So they voided their own restraining order. That's not how that works, by the way. And I just kept thinking about this. About, when I used to hang out with police officers. Back when I used to work in the community. They was telling stories about these restraining orders. Girls would go and get restraining orders on their boyfriends, and then they would kind of forget that the restraining order was in place. They say, "Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. Let's make up." And then they get into an argument, and she called the police, and then there's a restraining order in place, so he has to get arrested. So even if you are invited to be around somebody who has a restraining order on you, if you violate the restraining order, then you're going to jail. So it doesn't work like the restraining order is void if you come within, certain amount of feet of them. That's not how that works. It doesn't work that way at all. It has to be accidental in order for you to not get punished for violating a restraining order. There's some real crazy stories of girls doing that, having their, getting guys jammed up on purpose. They'll have a PPO on them or something like that, and they'll call them over, spend the night with them, and then call the cops in the morning. Really bizarre stuff. That's neither here nor there. That's more entertaining than what they did here. So after FTR jumped in the ring, they beat up Edge. Then Christian came out wheeling a 2x4 covered in spikes, so the spike thing that Abyss used to hang out with in TNA. And then here comes Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne. Edge spears one of them and chases the other one off. And then Christian gives Spike to Edge and they hug. And the crowd seemingly is okay with this, but they're not overjoyed at it. Then it was announced that Edge and Christian are going to reunite to wrestle Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne at Forbidden Door. I was disgusted. Absolutely disgusted. Kip Sabian is about to get a highlighted special match on pay-per-view. That's how bad AEW is now. This is something they absolutely would have done in 2020. Certainly in 2019 because they didn't have the roster. But this is something they probably would have gotten away with mid-2020. Mid-2021. Early 2021, they probably would have got away with something like this. Before they started getting Adam Cole and Danielson and CM Punk and all those people. They would have gotten away with being able to dump Kip Sabian into the middle of something important. But now, it's just flat out embarrassing. And it goes to show very poor roster management. When Kip Sabian is one of the people, a guy who isn't even qualified to share the same oxygen as Edge and Christian, a legendary tag team, is going to be in this match. And Nick Wayne, well, they're trying to give him the rub. But Kip Sabian, no. Nick Wayne is already worthless. He's 19, he's got time to grow, get some weight on him or something like that. But Kip Sabian is garbage. It's been 6 years of this guy. He's been there since the beginning. He's been there since the ink dried on the first TV deal. He's still nobody. He's still nothing. He's not fit to be the guy who works. He's not fit to pass out hot dogs in the concession stands. Why is this guy in this match? You couldn't replace him. You can't find anything for Powerhouse Hobbs and Samoa Joe to do. But we're dealing with this guy. Powerhouse Hobbs and Samoa Joe don't have a match on this show. But Kip Sabian does. That's the nature of Tony Khan's booking. Speaking of Samoa Joe, he actually got injured filming Twisted Metal. He wrestled on this show, but I would prefer you watch Twisted Metal than watch Dynamite. Twisted Metal Season 2 is actually pretty funny. It's a good show. Go watch that on Peacock, or if you sail the high seas, I suggest you watch Twisted Metal. If you didn't watch Season 1, go watch Season 1, and then go watch Season 2. Much better usage of your time than watching Dynamite. That's pretty much all the important elements of Dynamite right there. Yes, there was some stuff with Swerve and Okada, but it was meaningless. Yes, there was some stuff with Athena and Toni Storm, and as well as Mercedes Moné and Alex Windsor, but it was all meaningless. Nobody knows anything about this Fatal 4-Way. This match is a week away. There's only one person announced for this Fatal 4-Way for Mercedes Moné's belt. She, of course, didn't address losing to Toni Storm. None of this stuff matters. It's all so unimportant. The only other thing here, I suppose, is that Kyle Fletcher put out an open challenge for anybody from New Japan for his TNT Championship at Forbidden Door, and apparently the opponent is going to be Hiromu Takahashi. Now, I like Hiromu Takahashi. I think this match has a lot of potential. Unfortunately, this is not the Hiromu Takahashi of 3 or 4 years ago. He's actually kind of pudgy now. I'm just glad he's in the match. But when he was kind of in his, in better physical condition, AEW wanted nothing to do with him. They put him on the pre-show and all that sort of stuff because they don't really care about the juniors. And you would think that a wrestling card built around wrestling fans who watch New Japan and knows how good those guys are would not put them in a really bad spot, but they continue to do so. So El Desperado, who's the only guy worth watching in New Japan for me, he's not booked for the show. But they got Gabe Kidd. He's there. Great. All is right with the world. You got another Peckerwood on the show. I'm sure people are going to try to convince you that every Dynamite is the best Dynamite, but this one is one of the worst. And I definitely consider quitting watching not just this episode of Dynamite, but quitting watching Dynamite, period. But I'm a push through. I'm just going to have to change how I do the reviews. This is how I'll be doing it from now on. So, there. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.